The tractor beam grabbed my ship like an ex who won't take a hint, and honestly, I was too tired to be scared about it. I'd been awake for 19 hours running scout patrol on the edge of the barren expanse, chugging the last of my terrible instant coffee, when my sensors lit up like a Christmas tree that had personally offended someone. 1 second I was minding my business, the next my little scout ship, the bad idea, yes, I named it that, my sense of humor is a coping mechanism, got yanked out of hyperspace so hard my teeth rattled. "Oh, come on," I said to nobody, because that's a thing you do when you're alone in space for months at a time. "I just got this thing detailed." The ship on my scanners was not small. It was the kind of large where the word large feels insufficient and you start reaching for words like geological formation. Cavern Dominion markings, unmistakable. The Dominion had been steamrolling this quadrant for longer than humanity had known aliens existed, which, to be fair, was only about 40 years, but still. 40 species conquered. 0 species that had successfully told them no. I was about to become the 41st attempt at telling them no. My scout ship got hauled into a hangar bay the size of a small city, and I sat there for a second, hands still on the useless controls, thinking about how my mother always said I'd get myself killed being a smartass. This felt like the universe setting up the joke. The hatch got torn open, not opened, torn, like someone had lost patience with the concept of doors, and I was dragged out by a pair of insectoid soldiers, all chitin and mandibles and the kind of unblinking compound eyes that make you feel personally judged. They didn't say anything. They just marched me forward, gripping my arms hard enough to bruise. "So," I said, because silence has never once stopped me from talking, "nice ship." "Really? Very oppressive fascist empire chic. Who's your decorator?" "Nothing. Not even a flinch. Tough crowd." I filed that away. These guys had clearly never had anyone crack a joke at them before. That was going to be useful information later, assuming there was a later. They marched me down corridors that hummed with a low mechanical thrum, past viewports showing stars I didn't recognize, until we reached what I can only describe as a throne room, because apparently conquering the galaxy comes with an interior design budget. At the far end, on a raised dais, stood the biggest, most heavily armored alien I'd ever seen in my life, and I'd seen some things. He was easily 9 feet tall, chitinous plating the color of dried blood, mandibles that clicked when he moved, and a voice that came out as a deep, resonant growl even when he was speaking standard. "I am Commander Vex Thaler," he said, descending the dais steps with the slow, deliberate menace of someone who's never once needed to hurry. "Fleet Commander of the 3rd Dominion Armada. Conqueror of 41 worlds." 42, if we're doing headcounts today, I said. "Congrats. You want a cake or something?" The 2 guards holding me tensed. Vex Thaler stopped mid-stride, mandibles clicking in what I assumed was surprise, because in my limited experience, surprise looks pretty universal across species. A little pause, a little tilt of the head, the cosmic equivalent of, "Wait, what?" He studied me for a long moment. I was in a flight suit that had seen better decades, my hair was doing something criminal after 19 hours awake, and I was fairly sure I had old coffee stains on my collar. Not exactly the picture of a fearsome warrior. "You do not appear frightened," he said. "I mean, I'm tired, mostly. Fear takes energy I don't currently have." He leaned down slightly, and I got a good look at eyes like polished obsidian, no pupil, no warmth. "Every species I have conquered begged within the first hour. Some within the first minute. You are either very brave, or very stupid. Bold of you to assume those are mutually exclusive." His mandibles clicked again. I was starting to think that was a laugh, or the alien equivalent of one, except there wasn't much humor in it. "What are you?" he asked, and something in the way he said it made the whole room go quiet. Guards stopped shifting their weight. Somewhere behind him, a smaller alien with mottled green skin and too many eyes, an aide, I guessed, actually leaned forward like he didn't want to miss the answer. I grinned. I couldn't help it. It's a bad habit. Oh, buddy, I said. You're gonna wish you never asked. They didn't like that answer, apparently, because next thing I knew I was strapped into a chair in a sterile gray room with a device clamped to my temples that looked like it had been designed by someone who really, really hated eyebrows. This is a Cognosync extractor, said the green aide, the one with too many eyes, whose name I'd later learn was Skrit. He had the clipped, nervous energy of a middle manager who'd been handed a task above his pay grade. It calibrates to your species' baseline neurological pain threshold and extracts truthful responses through incremental discomfort escalation. It has never failed. Never failed, huh, I said. Bold claim for something that looks like a toaster had a baby with a migraine. He ignored me and activated the device. Here's the thing about human pain tolerance that the Dominion apparently didn't have on file: we're weird about it. We stub our toes on furniture at 3 in the morning and just sort of absorb it into our nervous systems like a rude houseguest we've learned to tolerate. We run marathons for fun. We give birth without anesthesia because sometimes there isn't time, and then go back to work a week later. We work double shifts on 4 hours of sleep, fueled entirely by spite and caffeine, and call it Tuesday. The machine hummed, whirred, and delivered what I assumed was supposed to be a searing jolt of calibrated agony straight into my nervous system. I blinked. That it? I asked. I've had worse paper cuts. Skrit's too many eyes all widened at once, which was deeply unsettling, honestly. He checked a readout, frowned, adjusted something, and tried again. The hum got louder. The device practically screamed with effort. I felt at that time, not gonna lie, it stung, but I've broken a rib falling off a ladder trying to fix a gutter and then finished fixing the gutter because I'd already climbed all the way up there and wasn't about to waste the trip. My pain tolerance calibration was apparently somewhere between mildly inconvenienced and personally offended, and this poor machine had been built expecting something closer to instant catastrophic collapse. This is not possible, Skrit muttered, more to himself than to me, adjusting dials with increasingly frantic little claws. The readings suggest either total system malfunction or I'm just built different, I offered. Might want to write that one down. He did not find that helpful. He wrote it down anyway, hands shaking slightly, and I caught a glimpse of the report header before he flipped the datapad away. Subject designation, human. Threat assessment, pending recalibration. Pending recalibration. I liked the sound of that. It meant I was breaking their instruments, and there's a special kind of joy in breaking someone's instruments just by existing. Skrit, bless his nervous little heart, apparently decided the commander needed context before this went any further, because I got dragged, walked, my legs still worked fine, thanks, into a briefing chamber where Vex Thaler sat reviewing a wall of data. Commander, Skrit said, the extraction failed. Not partially. Completely. I would like to present prior intelligence on this species before proceeding further. Vex Thaler waved a clawed hand, unimpressed. Proceed. Skrit pulled up a series of files, and I have to say, watching an alien read out humanity's greatest hits while trying very hard not to sound alarmed was one of the highlights of my week, possibly my year. Incident 1, Skrit began. A Dominion trade envoy engaged a human diplomat in a ritual drinking contest, intending to establish dominance through the envoy's naturally acid-based digestive tolerance. The human matched the envoy shot for the entirety of the contest and subsequently asked, and I quote, "You got anything stronger?" The envoy required 3 days of medical treatment. The human reportedly attended a work meeting the following morning. That tracks, I said. We call that Janet from accounting. Vex Thaler did not look at me. His mandibles had gone very still. Incident 2, Skrit continued, voice climbing half an octave. A human ground soldier, during a border skirmish, sustained the loss of an upper limb from Dominion energy weapons fire. Field medics recovered him still engaged in combat, having applied a tourniquet himself, reportedly stating the injury was, quote, just a flesh wound, and requesting to continue the engagement. Also tracks, I said. Group chat material, honestly. Incident 3. Skrit's voice had gone thin. Human settlements have been documented voluntarily cohabiting with apex predator species, creatures capable of killing an adult human with minimal effort, inviting them into their homes, feeding them by hand, and this is confirmed across multiple sources, Commander, permitting the animals to sleep in their beds. Cats, I said helpfully. Also dogs, if you want to talk about wolves we just decided to raise as family members. It's a whole thing. Vexthaler finally turned to look at me, and for the first time, something in his expression had shifted from irritation to something colder. More careful. Every report, Skrit said, voice now practically a squeak, concludes with the recommendation of extreme caution regarding this species. Every single report. And every single time, that recommendation has been dismissed by. That will be enough, Skrit, Vexthaler said, low and sharp. Skrit shut up immediately, eyes darting nervously between his commander and me. I decided to fill the silence, because that's what I do. So, quick question. Do you guys have snacks around here? All this getting tortured with a broken toaster stuff is making me hungry. Neither of them answered. I took that as a no. Vexthaler had me brought back to the throne room, and this time, instead of the chair, I was left standing, unshackled, in the middle of the floor, surrounded by a loose ring of armed guards who all looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. You believe this is a game, Vexthaler said, circling me slowly, his footsteps heavy enough to vibrate through the floor. I have shown you the remains of species who resisted. Entire homeworlds turned to glass. And you make jokes about snacks. Look, I could pretend to be scared, I said, but I think we both know that ship sailed the second your torture toaster tapped out. He stopped in front of me, leaning down until his face was level with mine, close enough that I could feel the low thrum of whatever passed for his breathing. Then answer my question honestly, human. What are you? And here's the thing. I could have kept joking. It's my default setting, it's gotten me through worse days than this one. But something about the way he asked it, like he genuinely needed to know, like the not knowing was worse than any answer I could give him, made me actually think about it for a second. You want the real answer? I said. Fine. We're not the strongest species out here. I've seen your soldiers lift things that would turn a human into a pancake. We're not the fastest, we're not the smartest on paper, we don't have claws or venom or any of the fun stuff. What we've got is a lot dumber and a lot scarier than that. Explain, he said. We're stubborn. Like, pathologically, unreasonably stubborn. Our species has been through 5 mass extinction events, ice ages, plagues that wiped out a third of our population at a time, wars that killed tens of millions of us in a handful of years, and every single time, instead of learning our lesson and giving up, we just sort of dusted ourselves off and got back to inventing stupid things, like pineapple pizza, and then arguing about whether it was a mistake. His mandibles had gone completely still. Behind him, I could see Skrit frozen mid-note-taking. You conquered 41 species, I continued, because somewhere along the way, every single one of them decided that surviving mattered more than winning, and they surrendered. That's not a knock on them, by the way, that's the smart move, statistically. Cut your losses, live to see tomorrow. Very reasonable. And your species? We never really learned how to do that, I said. Somewhere in our evolutionary wiring, the know when to quit module just didn't install properly. We'll keep going long after it stops being smart. Long after it stops making sense. We just don't stop. It's not bravery, exactly. It's more like a design flaw that happened to work out for us. For a long moment, nobody in that room said anything. Then Vexthaler straightened up, and I saw it, just a flicker, right at the edges of that armored, unreadable face, the first genuine crack in his confidence since I'd been dragged aboard his ship. You are one human, he said slowly, like he was trying to convince himself. Alone. Unarmed. On my ship. I smiled. Yeah, I said. About that. See, here's the part one hadn't mentioned yet, mostly because it's funnier if you don't see it coming. Scout ships like the bad idea come with a distress beacon that automatically triggers under specific conditions, like, say, unscheduled and violent removal from hyperspace by a tractor beam. Mine had gone off the second the Dominion grabbed me, screaming a location ping straight back to the nearest human fleet outpost, which happened to be a lot closer than Vexthaler probably assumed, because humans had been quietly expanding into this sector for longer than the Dominion's intelligence apparently accounted for. That ping had been broadcasting for hours now. And somewhere out there, past the edge of Vexthaler sensors, a response fleet was already burning hard on an intercept course, because that's the other thing about humans, we don't leave our people behind, not because it's strategically sound, but because it's never once occurred to us not to. I didn't know the exact timing when I stood there running my mouth in his throne room. But I knew it was coming, and honestly, that knowledge is a hell of a thing to have in your back pocket during a hostage situation. The lights flickered first. Then the whole ship shuddered, hard enough that a couple of guards actually staggered. Report. Vexthaler barked, whirling toward a comm panel. A frantic voice crackled through, alien language I didn't fully catch, but the tone was unmistakable, panic. Something was hitting the ship's outer hull. Multiple somethings. Human vessels, the voice reported, translation kicking in a half-second later. Emerging from ambush positions, 12 signatures, weapons hot. I grinned so hard my face hurt. Oh good, I said, cracking my knuckles. Rides here. The guards around me hesitated, torn between watching their commander and watching the readouts flashing red across every screen in the room, and hesitation, it turns out, is exactly the kind of gap a stubborn, mildly injured, extremely caffeinated human needs. I grabbed the nearest guard's own stun baton right out of his loosened grip. Never bring a stun baton to a fight with someone who's already had the pain calibration on their nervous system broken by your own equipment, incidentally, and drove it into his side. He went down hard. The second guard turned, and I threw the baton like a javelin, more out of desperation than skill, and caught him across the mandibles hard enough to stagger him. Contain her. Vexthaler roared, but the room had descended into chaos, alarms wailing, the ship rocking under sustained fire, guards torn between 3 different directions at once. I bolted for the nearest exit, skidding around a corner as a squad of soldiers thundered past me toward the hangar bay, too panicked to even notice the human sprinting the opposite direction. I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall, because apparently that's universal across species too, thank God for basic safety regulations, and used it to jam a set of blast doors closed behind me, buying myself a few extra seconds. Word was clearly spreading through the ship now. I could hear it in the tone of the alarms, in the way soldiers' footsteps had changed from organized march to something closer to a stampede. The human is loose. The human broke the extractor. The human is still smiling. I was, for the record. Still smiling. Running on fumes and spite is a great look on me. Vexthaler caught up to me 2 corridors later, alone, having apparently decided this was a fight he needed to finish personally. He filled the corridor almost completely, mandibles bared, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked less like a conqueror and more like a man standing at the edge of a realization he really didn't want to have. How, he demanded, does one unarmed human cause this much damage alone? I stopped running. No point. There was nowhere left to go, and honestly, I wanted to see this through. You asked me back there what I am, I said, catching my breath. I gave you the honest version. Want the short version too? He didn't answer, but he didn't attack either. He just watched me, waiting. I'm the reason your ancestors probably had a word for nightmare, I said. Not because I'm special. I'm not some elite super soldier, Commander. I'm a tired scout pilot who hasn't slept properly in 2 days. And I still walked through your ship, broke your unbreakable machine, and now there's a fleet of my very stubborn friends parked outside your hull because they heard I was in trouble and didn't bother asking whether it was a good idea to come get me. That's not me being special. That's just Tuesday, for us. Something in his posture changed. It wasn't fear, exactly. Vexthaler didn't strike me as a being who felt fear the way I understood it. It was closer to the look someone gets when they've been staring at a puzzle for years and the final piece just clicked into a shape they really didn't want to see. If one of you can do this, he said slowly, unarmed, exhausted, alone. Yeah, I said. Now you're getting it. The ship rocked again, harder this time, and through the nearest viewport I caught the unmistakable silhouette of human warships moving into boarding position, weapons trained, lights blazing. Vexthaler looked past me at them, and I watched 41 worlds worth of confidence quietly reconsider its life choices. He didn't attack me. He didn't call for reinforcements. He just stood there for a long moment, and then, very deliberately, stepped aside. Skrit, he said into his calm, voice flat, recall all boarding parties. Signal the human vessels. We are standing down. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on the ramp of a human dropship, wrapped in a thermal blanket I absolutely did not need but accepted anyway because someone handed it to me with genuine concern in their eyes, drinking the worst coffee I have ever had in my life and loving every burnt, bitter drop of it. Vexthaler's dreadnought sat silent and powered down a few hundred meters off our bow, its weapons cold, its shields lowered. The Dominion had not surrendered exactly, nobody signed anything, no treaty got drawn up on the spot, but word had already started spreading across whatever passed for Dominion command channels, and I was told later, by a very smug intelligence officer, that the chatter was something to behold. Apparently somewhere out there, other alien species who'd been quietly watching the Dominion's activities in this sector had picked up fragments of the encounter through their own listening posts, and the resulting panic had a very specific flavor to it. Not, the humans have a superweapon. Not, the humans have a massive fleet. Just, simply, one of them did that. Alone. On purpose. While injured. Voluntarily. That's a much scarier sentence than any weapon, if you think about it. Back on the Dominion flagship, Skrit filed his updated intelligence report that same day. I never saw it myself, but a friend in Signals intercepted a copy and forwarded it to me months later, mostly as a joke. It was longer than any of his previous reports, written in a font size that suggested he'd been either furious or terrified while typing it, possibly both. The recommendation at the bottom, underlined 3 times for emphasis, simply read, extreme caution. I heard that when it reached the Dominion's ruling council, one of the older members read it over, frowned, and asked what, exactly, extreme was supposed to mean in this context. Nobody had a good answer for him. As for me, I got debriefed, got yelled at gently by my commanding officer for provoking a Dominion warlord instead of waiting quietly for rescue like a sane person, got a commendation I definitely didn't deserve, and went right back to flying scout patrol 2 weeks later, because apparently getting kidnapped by an alien empire isn't grounds for extended leave in this line of work. I think about Vexthaler sometimes, out there somewhere, presumably still trying to recalibrate that poor broken extractor, still trying to figure out what exactly he'd stumbled into that day. I hope he's doing okay, honestly. Not because I feel bad for him, the guy conquered 41 worlds, he can handle a little existential crisis, but because somewhere out there, humanity had just gotten added to a whole lot of species nightmare fuel lists, and honestly, I'm a little proud of that.